Welcome to the TBS Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Aikman, and today we'll be talking with TBS Provost Dr. Scott Stripling as he tells us all about the school's upcoming trip to Israel, his new book on the Exodus, and all things TBS. Well, Dr. Stripling, welcome to the TBS Podcast. So we're so excited to have you on today and to chat with you about Israel and your books and your writing and your documentaries and all the cool stuff that you do around here. The first thing I was wondering, so you're the provost at the Bible Seminary, correct? So I've heard that term. What is a provost? What do you do?
Well, that's a good question. My mother congratulated me 5 years ago. She said, "Congratulations on becoming the provost." What is a provost? You're not the only one who has the question. It actually comes out of the medieval university.
Okay.
And so it's sort of that verbiage that has survived with us. Basically means the head of the academic program. So as provost, I oversee our student body, student life, our faculty, hiring and supervision and curriculum and things like that, and the entire academic process of the school.
So what's your favorite part? Because those are a wide range of responsibilities. What's your favorite part about being provost?
I like building a team. Just seeing our student body grow over these last 5 years has been real rewarding to me, and seeing people move into positions of leadership and also seeing our faculty develop and how all that works as a cohesive unit to achieve what we're wanting to achieve, which is an end product of a graduate who is confident in his or her skill and ability to take the gospel to the nations.
Okay, so I want to press in just real briefly into that portrait of a graduate. What does a graduate look like? The ideal person who's finished at TBS and they're taking on the world. What are the character qualities that you want to see?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking for someone who has diligence, perseverance, acumen, academic acumen, demonstrated excellence, and networked and connected so that he or she can take that next step of ministry that the Lord has for that person. So if those things are present, watch out, world. Here comes a great person who's going to make an impact.
Yeah, that's exciting. And as a student here, I'm excited to be a part of that process myself.
Right. Well, think about what the Bible says. As arrows in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of your youth. Now, and in a sense, we look at our students as a spiritual father and spiritual sons and daughters. And so, like arrows in the hand of a mighty man, we want to take someone like you and just launch you out to do these incredible things.
It's a fun way of calling yourself my father. He's not my father.
Yeah, nor do I want any responsibility, but I do want credit for anything good
anything good. Oh man, that's fun. So you've been provost for 5 years and man, doing an awesome job.
Oh, well, thanks.
Love being a part of the school. We're underneath your leadership.
Well, thanks. It's been a blast, and we're really excited about the next 5 years, and the process that we're on. I think the joy's in the journey. The end result is cool to achieve things and to get where we're going, but if we don't have joy in the journey, we're missing the point. And a lot of people really struggle with that. They can live in the past, they can live in the future, like when I get there, then I'm going to be happy, but we've got to be happy right where we are and content where we are.
Yeah, and so you said you're over everything academic. So is registration open for fall classes at TBS?
Registration is open, and we're getting quite a few folks registering already. We even have some summer classes that folks can still sneak into right here at the last minute and get into. Prayer and Worship 501 that Dr. Lewis is teaching. Then I'm going to be teaching 3 courses in Israel. So of course that would require someone to go to Israel to take those courses. But yeah, fall registration's open, and we're expecting a record enrollment.
That's awesome. So if somebody who's listening right now were to say, man, this Dr. Stripling guy, I'm already sold, I need to be underneath his leadership, what would they have to do? What would the process look like to get registered for some of the classes?
Okay, go to our website, TheBibleSeminary.edu, and then follow through those steps that are listed there. call our office, and someone here, usually carousels answering the phone at the front desk, but someone will then guide them through that what we would call a matriculation process. So getting in an application, references, transcripts, setting an appointment to meet with me, getting a degree plan set in place, and then we work them as quickly as you can through that process so they can go ahead and get their syllabi and their textbooks and get ready for the fall.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. If you're listening right now and you're not a student at the Bible Seminary, you're missing out and your life's not complete. I'm sorry to tell you. So go online, TheBibleSeminary.edu, start the process of applying. It'll change your life.
Absolutely. And listen, folks can audit too. Let's say that they're not interested in a degree for whatever reason, but they do want to take some courses with us. They can do that also. Just go through the audit process. It's only $375, and we have a lot of students who do that. And now that our distance ed program is accredited, people from all over the world can do that. So no telling how many people we're going to have joining us this fall. Live, synchronously.
Right.
So as you know, it's a really dynamic situation. You're there in the classroom, and then you're seeing these other students up on the wall, and they're interacting live, real time with the students who are there physically. It's really cool.
Yeah, and you know what, and I will say that I have a lot of friends who are in different universities, undergraduate and graduate programs all over the country right now. And as we've talked through this whole COVID thing about the distance education portion of their learning, I'm pretty confident, I'll go on record saying that the Bible Seminary has done the best job of any educational institution that I've seen at incorporating this hybrid model of in-person and distance learning, where people feel like they can really engage with other classmates, engage with the professors, and not lose out on educational content.
Or the discipleship process. If you're just a student in a typical online, because I've taught online classes for years, and I didn't really like teaching them, and my students didn't really like taking them, other than for the convenience or to just check off that box. But if you're looking for relationship and you're looking for discipleship, the TBS model can't be beat.
So go online, start that process today. I will see you in the fall, here in person or online, and it'll be awesome. And so in addition to being the provost of the seminary, I feel like every week, every time I come into your office, I find out that there's some other huge responsibility or ministry that you oversee. And one of those is that you direct digs in Shiloh and in other parts of Israel as well. Is that right?
Right. My focus is what we would call the Southern Levant. So that's Israel and Jordan, primarily a little bit of Lebanon, a little bit of Syria, a little bit of Egypt, but primarily Israel and Jordan. So I have dug in Jordan and also in Israel, and I'm currently the director of the excavations at ancient Shiloh. That's 20 miles north of Jerusalem, and it's in the heartland, right on that spine that goes from, say, Shechem in the north to Hebron in the south. And that's where the Israelites first had a foothold when they entered into the land. And we are about to do our 4th season of excavation at ancient Shiloh, and we've already got a lot to talk about.
So how long is a season of excavation?
We dig for 4 weeks, then we do a 5th week of conservation. So the walls and so forth that we expose, if we don't treat them properly, then they'll fall apart. And so we invest in restoring them so that they'll be there for generations to come. And I've got about a week of prep work before the dig and about a week of prep work after. So I'm there about 7 weeks.
So you said this is the 4th season in Shiloh, but how long have you been involved in the world of biblical archaeology?
Well, over 2 decades. I was looking at some pictures. I'm the keynote speaker at a conference in September in Albuquerque that's a big archaeological conference, and they are posting pictures from past conferences. And so I went on there and I looked, and there I was 25 years ago in the audience, watching. They had me out there, and so now I'm giving the keynote address, so it's been quite a ride.
So how did you get involved initially? You said that you were an audience member 25 years ago, back when I was not even a thought in my parents' minds. But you're in Albuquerque or wherever this conference is held that year. You're in the audience. What drew you to start attending these types of events?
Okay, I got fascinated with the biblical text when I was a teenager and obsessed with the biblical text. Number one, I needed it to help me change my own life. But secondly, I just found it fascinating, and I wanted to begin to connect the dots. As I sort of got involved in ministry and leadership and pretty quickly, it's kind of like I was the one teaching the Bible and not the one just studying the Bible. And so I really felt a responsibility to do it well. So as I took classes and studied in depth, I got the sense, Zach, that the things I struggled with understanding had to do with the culture, the background of the text. Like the Bible talks about a street. What did a street look like? Or a roof. They broke through the guy's roof in Capernaum and lowered well, it doesn't look like my roof. I'm sure it doesn't have composite shingles on it.
Right.
What did a roof look like? And so those things that I think we struggled with lay in the material culture. And so that's what began to direct me in a path. When I went to seminary then, I took my first course in ancient Near Eastern cultures and languages and archaeology. I took my first trip to Israel, and that sort of sealed that direction. I was a preacher, and I still get to preach all the time, but I don't have to deal with any of the problems that, churches have.
Right.
But I thought I could make a unique contribution in connecting God's witness. We think about general revelation being nature and special revelation being the Bible, but then we have the material culture witness that God has left behind. And to be able to connect those, I have found to be extremely helpful in this process of understanding God's plan and will.
So can you give me one or two examples of times in your own life where an understanding of the material culture of the ancient Near East has helped you understand God better or grow spiritually?
Absolutely, and it happens to me all the time, but one that I think of right away is when we were excavating all of these coins at our previous dig, which was Biblical Ai or Biblical Ephraim, Kerbet El Makader, Joshua 7 and 8, and John 11:54. What we had was a New Testament city on top of an Old Testament city. So
Really?
It's just a whole nother story, but it's really, really fascinating that I'm still in the process of publishing. But anyway, we excavated about 1,350 coins, and which is a lot.
Right.
And maybe more than any other dig in Israel because we were metal detecting carefully and sifting our loci. But anyway, when it was all said and done, we had 2 gold coins, 5 silver coins, and everything else was bronze. So 1,350 coins, 2 gold, 5 silver, everything else bronze. See what clicked in my brain? I started thinking about the beggar at the beautiful gate. And Peter and John say to him, what? Silver and gold we do not have. Well, they weren't lying.
Right.
Silver and gold coins were very, very rare. We read a story about a woman in Luke 15. You've got 3 lost things, a lost son, a lost sheep, and a lost coin. Well, as many times as I had read that text, I could not have told you what kind of coin it was.
Was it silver?
Very good.
Yes,
okay.
that's the test.
You were doing better than me because
go, yeah.
I would just, if I were preaching from that, I would say there was a woman who had 10 coins and she lost 1 and so forth. But when you realize those ratios that I just gave you, 5 silver coins, 2 gold coins, and 1,340 bronze coins, this woman had 10 silver coins. What do we now know about her that we didn't know before?
She was wealthy.
She was a woman of wealth. She owned her own home because she began to move the furniture, sweep the floor, light lamps. It was urgent. It couldn't wait until tomorrow. She notified the neighbors that there was a crisis, and she searched until she found that coin, which was about 2 weeks worth of wages for that coin. And she had 10, so that's 5 months' income. That's what your financial planner, Zach, tells you should have in the bank at all times
Right.
is 5 months' income. She actually had it. Now, you see what archaeology does? It didn't change the text of Luke 15, but it illuminated it for us. It set it in a context so that we could understand it as they did in the first century.
Yeah, that's exciting. You're piquing my interest in biblical archaeology, which is not something that I know too much about. Maybe I'll have to join you on one of these digs someday.
You heard it right here, ladies and gentlemen. Zach is coming next year on the
I
disc.
said maybe, but hey,
by the time we edit this,
yes, by the time we edit this, I will be for sure coming on the dig next summer. So tell me more about what y'all will be doing this summer in Shiloh on this dig.
we are in a place, of course, where the tabernacle was for over 3 centuries. Joshua 18:1, when they arrived after the conquest, Joshua had them set up the tabernacle at Shiloh. So Jerusalem is still a pagan city, and for 3 centuries, Shiloh is the center of Israelite life and worship. And so the tabernacle is there with the Ark of the Covenant. So we are excavating the northern slope at Tel Shiloh, and it appears that we have monumental buildings from the period of the tabernacle and evidence of a cultic system that was operating at that time, a religious sacrificial system. So it's very, very exciting. We've already got significant evidence, and so we're going to try to finish exposing this large building from the period of the tabernacle and see if we can interpret exactly how it functioned. And we're talking very clearly now because we can carbon date it, and we've got ceramic dating. So I'm a ceramicist, so like we can date the pottery, and that helps us date everything else. Clearly, it's the time of Eli and Samuel that we're dealing with. So it's for those coming on the dig, I think they're going to be in for a big treat this summer.
At this moment on the campus of the Bible Seminary, we are cultivating biblical leaders that are rooted in the Word.
I love the Bible Seminary because of the focus on the inerrant Word of God.
I came to the Bible Seminary out of a desire to know the Bible.
Whether you're a ministry leader, college or high school student, pastor, or simply have a desire to learn the Word of God, there's room for you at the Bible Seminary.
So tell me, you said this is the time of Eli and Samuel. When chronologically is that? When would you date that?
Okay, archaeologically we would call that the Iron Age 1. On the calendar we would put that around 1100 to say 1060, that generation, 1100 to 1060 BC.
Okay, 1100 to 1060.
Yeah. So the tabernacle is destroyed by the Philistines. The ark is captured around 1075, give or take a few years, and then apparently the site is destroyed. Psalm 78 kind of alludes to the destruction of Shiloh by the Philistines, but it doesn't come right out and say it. But now we have uncovered that matrix of destruction that dates to that time. So again, this is an example where archaeology doesn't change the biblical text, but it does illuminate it for us.
And you mentioned as well, you said that you found evidence of a cultic sacrificial system in Shiloh. When you use that term cultic, is that a reference to the Israelite system of worship, or are you specifically denoting some sort of pagan system that was operating in tandem with?
Okay, so all cultures have a cultic system. So it's their religious beliefs. So the Israelites had their cultic system, the Canaanites had their cultic system, the Egyptians had their cultic system. So it just means very simply how they understood God or the gods. And so being the only monotheist around, they were quite unique, and they had a sacrificial system that enabled them to repair their broken vertical relationship with God and their broken horizontal relationships with each other. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin. And so this was a means by which they could restore their fractured relationships.
Okay, so this was the Israeli cultic system that you find evidence of. Have you ever found evidence on a dig of pagan worship happening in the times and places where the Israelites were around?
Unfortunately, yes. We have a lot of paganism, and the Bible talks about it. Right. I mean, you've got all this syncretism going on. We archaeologists, have found 1,000 what are called JPFs, Judean pillar figurines. And they're these little figurine goddesses, exaggerated body parts and so forth. But women would carry these. And we found one, but there's been 1,000 of them that have been found altogether. In fact, one of our TBS students, Abigail Levitt, was the one who found this JPF. And so they are clearly in an Israelite context. And so they're worshiping Yahweh right along with their other pagan things. And then along comes the Babylonian captivity. So we've got this massive destruction in 587 BC. When they return from captivity, they still have other issues, but idolatry is no longer one of them. We never find those fertility figurines again after the captivity.
Why do you think that is?
I think it grinded it out of them. They saw the price that they paid, how much God hated idolatry. I mean, for crying out loud, it's the second commandment, Right. And they're openly violating the second commandment, and they pay a high price for that. And so somehow in their psyche, they determine, human nature, I guess, this is not worth what we had to pay,
Right.
Now, they still had lots of other problems, but no longer did they struggle with idolatry. And again, that's how archaeology can illuminate that period of history for us.
Wow, that's exciting. Do you think that what lessons do you think we can learn from looking at Israeli history and the price that they paid to forego their idols?
Yeah, I mean, Jeremiah 7:12, God says to Jeremiah, prior to the Babylonian destruction and captivity, "Go now to Shiloh," he said. "Go now to Shiloh, where I first caused my name to dwell, and see what I did there." Now, what's he trying to tell him? Don't think I won't destroy Jerusalem. Look, go to Shiloh. You think I didn't love Shiloh, where for 3 centuries I lived there, I dwelt there? The tabernacle was there. Go look at the destruction there, which is, Zach, what is so awesome is that's what we're able to do.
Right.
We get to do Jeremiah 7:12 and literally examine the evidence of what happens when we disobey God. So it's a tragic tale.
Yeah, I think that's something that everybody could learn from and kind of heed in their own lives, because I think that sometimes I remember talking with somebody a while back who argued that God loved America so much that he'd never destroy it, you know, and I think that what you're talking about is something that we can really dwell on and go, look, there's nothing so sacred to the Lord that he's not willing to give it up if it'll lead to the holiness of his people.
Absolutely. I mean, I spent years excavating at another site that many people believe is ancient Sodom. And I mean, if those people are right in the identification, it was massively destroyed. So does he act in history? I guess is the big question. We as individuals, Zach, are going to be judged in eternity. But nations are not judged in eternity. Nations are judged in temporal, here in history. And so when we see, for example, these destruction matrices at these sites that coincide with the biblical text and timing, it should be a sobering thought to us.
Right. So you've used this term destruction matrix a couple of times now. Can you unpack that term for me? What does a matrix of destruction look like archaeologically?
We love destruction, okay? Archaeologists love destruction because if there's no destruction, then things just wear out over several generations. They just wear out and fall apart. But if we can get some good destruction, an earthquake, an enemy, attack and invasion, a volcanic eruption, some sort of destruction, it seals everything. And so you're going to have some destruction from, that invasion, if you will, burning usually, and then it gets built over by people when they return. So it's what we would call a sealed locus. And that's what we want because we can be confident then in the dating, whatever's underneath that matrix, which is going to have pottery and char and wood and glass, maybe glass or glyptic type remains. Whatever was happening at the time is going to be in that burn level, what we would call a matrix.
Okay, because everything's destroyed all at once and then rebuilt all together. You can see the specific time. Is that right?
Okay, so let's say they come back and they rebuild on top. And they're going to do that because the reason they built there in the first place was because there was water usually.
Right.
Okay, so now there's all this building material lying around. You're on a high spot, so it's defensible. So 3 things you want in a city. You want access to water, defensibility, and trade routes nearby. So you've got those 3 things. They're going to rebuild and seal that burn layer underneath their foundations. And that's what we're doing at Shiloh right now. We literally have plastered floors, and underneath those floors is that destruction matrix.
Really? Plastered floors meaning
like plaster.
Modern day?
No. From about the year 1000 BC. So the destruction was about 1070 BC. And then they come back and they rebuild, and they're plastering their floors for their homes and buildings.
Right.
And underneath it is that
it's just all the old stuff.
And then it keeps going down. And then below that, we've got another 1,000 years and then another destruction layer. From way, way back, say 1800 BC, we've got another destruction layer. And then it keeps going all the way down to bedrock. So we've got 9 distinct layers or levels at Shiloh.
At Shiloh alone, there's 9 layers of history just packed on top of one another.
That's right.
Was the plan eventually to go all the way down?
Yes. We go all the way to bedrock because a lot of features are actually built into the bedrock.
Really?
And some of our most important finds come at bedrock. Cultic finds, foundation deposits, and things like that. And even subterranean, like when we go to bedrock, we may find a subterranean cavern, olive press, tomb, hiding system. So we go all the way.
So how deep is bedrock?
It depends. So at Shiloh, you're in some places it may be 2 meters, in some places it may be 6 or 7 meters.
Really? So 2 meters is roughly 6 feet.
A little over
Right, a
6
little
feet,
over
yeah.
6 feet. So in 6 feet, there's 9 distinct layers of
Maybe not at that point
Or-
where there's
or-
2
or
meters.
maybe in a
They might not all
separate
be
layer,
there,
right.
but let's say we're in the deeper part.
Right.
Then maybe we're going to have all 9 of those layers that are present. So in the bulk, let's say that wall is the bulk. What we have excavated where we're sitting, but we did not excavate that. We can actually see the layering in there. There's a destruction layer there, there's a floor there, there's mud brick here, another destruction layer there. We can literally read 3,500 years of history right there.
That's incredible that we have the ability to do that. And you mentioned this time of Eli and Samuel, and that's kind of the focus of the dig this summer.
Yes.
So is there a very specific then layer that y'all are going to be focusing your attention on?
It's our stratum 5. Now, of course, we have the strata above and the strata below that we're dealing with too, but primarily we're looking at Iron 1, which is that period, and that's our stratum 5. Now, of course, we haven't said this yet, but TBS has an archaeology program. I mean, that's one of our master's degrees. So students literally study this with us here and then go with us into the field. So it's the ultimate laboratory.
Oh, that is so exciting. So in a strata, to be clear, is that just the layer of sediment
That we can concretely date. So a stratum, singular, or strata, plural. So each stratum we can assign a date to. So we start excavating, then we have all of our loci, and then we attach those loci to a stratum.
Okay, and the stratum 5, how thick is that in most places?
Well, okay, that's a good question. It undulates a little bit. It's not like a layer cake where it's even, but you know, it might be as thin as a foot or as thick as 3 feet because everything's compressed, you know, over time.
Yeah.
And the way we build the chronology is, of course, starting with the Bible. And so we have my new book here, The 5 Views on the Exodus. And so I wrote the early date view. And dating the Exodus is how we begin to date that leveling, if you will. So if the Bible is correct and the Exodus was in 1446 and they wandered for 40 years, then 1406 they're entering the land, they wander for 6 years, and they arrive at Shiloh in 1400. Now, I make the case that it's not just 1 Kings 6:1, but it's numerous biblical passages and abundant archaeological evidence that give us confidence in that date. So then we can move, here's archaeological principle number 1, we move from the known to the unknown. So starting with a known, now we can work out from there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I just love the mental image of you leading a team of people overseas, and they're not just TBS students, correct? Right. We were talking about this earlier. From all over the world, people are coming, and you're leading this team from all over the world, dozens of people that are committed to uncovering biblical history, and they're traveling thousands of miles to dig through a 1 foot layer of sediment that is gonna unlock so many keys to understanding what's going on in this critical period of biblical history.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing, Zach, is engaging in the arena of ideas. And that's what we want to empower our students to do, is to not be passive, but to engage in the arena of ideas. We're doing frontline, hardcore, cutting-edge scientific archaeology, taking the ancient textual material and analyzing it through the biblical matrix and other ancient literature as well. Yeah, we've got like normally 11 universities that are part of our consortium, plus 5 or 6 Israeli universities working with us, the Danish Archaeological Society, and we're flying flags from all these nations right at our headquarters there. So we kind of look like the United Nations, you know. But it's cool that we get to lead that and we get to sort of have a voice in this very, very important debate.
So one more final question about this summer's dig. If somebody's listening, do they have to be a student at TBS to accompany you on the dig?
No, anyone can come of all ages. We have things that are more physical, things that are not as physical but are equally important. So anyone of any age can come. They can go to our website, digshiloh.org, to get information about the dig. To learn more about TBS, of course, they can go to TheBibleSeminary.edu, and my personal website is scottstripling.net.
So kind of moving on from Shiloh, and you referenced it a second ago, you just recently came out with this new book on the Exodus, right?
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about this? And you mentioned the early date argument you make. What is that?
Okay, Zondervan has what they call a counterpoint series. And so you take scholars who have different views, and each gets to write his or her view, and then each of the other scholars gets to respond to that, and then you get to rebut those rebuttals, if you will. So it's really a great way to learn. They asked me to write the early date, which is the biblical date, and that's chapter 1, which I thought was awesome because most students only read the first chapter of a book anyway. So I thought it was great that I got to write chapter 1. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 5 passages of Scripture and showing how they all synchronize with the same date. And this is over a long period of time, so it's just statistically impossible that that's an anomaly. Any of the other views that people are taking, they have to argue around that the biblical writers didn't actually mean what they said. Because they clearly point us to the mid-15th century BC, which to us is the 18th Egyptian dynasty. Then I'm looking at the archaeological evidence in Egypt and in the land of the Bible that synchronizes with that, like these destruction levels and so forth at various sites. And so I think students will find it fascinating and viewers will find it fascinating, and they tell me that it's selling really, really well right now.
That's awesome. So this early date period argument that you make for the Exodus, is that a more popular view or is a less popular view among scholars? Right?
Well, that's a good question. It was the view 100 years ago, this was the view because it was the clearly the biblical date. As archaeology began to emerge, some scholars began to say, wait a minute, we're not finding evidence that seems to support that, so the Bible must not actually mean what it said. Now you have to understand at that time, Zach, like 1% of Israel had been excavated. And so they're like jettisoning the biblical date when 1% of the evidence has been excavated. Guess how much we have excavated now? Like 5 or 6%.
Oh, so it's still
so
yeah.
Much to... So, you know, when somebody says, well, there's not evidence, do you think it might be in the other 94%? You know?
Yeah.
So what we do, those of us who take the biblical date, we start with the text, and then we take archaeology and we bring it alongside and we synchronize. Those who take, say, the late date view, which is a 13th century date during the time of Ramesses II, they're starting with the archaeological data and then bringing the biblical text and making it fit there.
Okay, that feels a little bit treacherous to me because, like you said, if they're taking 5% of an excavated Israel as their foundation, then they're going to have to change all the time, won't they, to accommodate new evidence?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And this is not to say that I'm a better Christian than anyone who has this view right here, but we're trying to understand it and be faithful to the text the best that we can. But this is exactly what happens. And so W.F. Albright, who we call the father of biblical archaeology, was a biblical scholar and a tremendous archaeologist. But he was the first one who made this mistake. I mean, he was excavating, didn't see that there was a correlation between the layers and where the Bible wasn't, so he started sort of tweaking the Bible and saying, well, you know, 480 years doesn't literally mean 480 years in 1 Kings 6:1, but it must mean 12 idealized generations. And then that allowed him, once you can start moving that data around, then you can do anything that you want. So again, go from the known to the unknown would be my advice.
Okay, I think that's good advice. And I love the Counterpoint series that Zondervan does. So if somebody who's listening wants to buy a copy of your book and read through it and become enlightened on the issue of the Exodus, where could they get one? Okay,
they can go on Zondervan's website, Amazon, or any other place. Or if they want to make a large donation to my dig or to TBS, they come by and I will sign a personal copy for them.
A personal signed copy is on the table.
And you can define big for yourself, all right?
Oh, man.
6 digits, 7 digits.
6 digits, 8, 9, 10. You just keep going. Yeah. That's exciting, man. And congratulations on completing the book. That's something I've never done, certainly. Are there any other kind of final questions, big projects coming up for you that we should be on the lookout for? Okay, we're doing a lot of media stuff this summer. The History Channel series that we filmed a couple months ago here at TBS, Secrets of the Lost Ark, that'll come out this fall, so folks should keep an eye on the History Channel coming up. We're going to film 2 new documentaries this summer while we are in Israel. So if they'll just sort of keep an eye on our website, our social media, then they'll get a flow of all this stuff as it's coming out in the coming months. That's awesome. We'll have to stay tuned. Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. It's a pleasure. God bless. Easy. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the TBS Podcast.